My name is Razan Zaitouneh, a human rights activist from Damascus.
When protests erupted across Syria in March 2011, rights activist Razan Zaitouneh was on the front line. She was key to revolutionary efforts across the country. Beside her was her close friend Mazen Darwish. We meet the human rights lawyer in Paris. For me, the most important aspect of Razan's personality is her rejection of injustice and her willingness to do anything to fight injustice. When the Assad regime responded with a bloody crackdown, arresting thousands of activists, Razan made sure the world would know.
She became a key source. She had this sort of softness, almost frailty to her when you met her at the beginning, and you're like, how is she doing this very dangerous job? And then as soon as you spoke to her, you immediately discovered the sort of steely courage and principles.
In 2013, Razan fled regime-held Damascus for Douma, a town that would later be dominated by the hardline militant group Jaish al-Islam. Razan launched women's initiatives, fought for the rule of law and documented human rights abuses, including those committed by armed rebels. All that made her a competitor for Jaish al-Islam, to its control, to its ideology, and its desire to establish an emirate or caliphate. Razan was targeted several times. A bullet left at her doorstep, and an anonymous letter obtained by DW threatening her life. The words, "I will kill you," repeated 5 times. Her trusted confidant, Nadim Houri, asked her to leave Douma.
She responded the next day saying, "I am not going to move. We did not do a revolution and lose thousands of souls so that such monsters can come and repeat the same unjust history. These people need to be held to account, just like the regime."
On December 9, 2013, armed men stormed her office. They abducted Razan together with her husband and 2 fellow activists. After years of investigation, human rights lawyer Mazen Darwish and his team are confident that Jaish al-Islam are responsible. They gave us exclusive access to their findings. Additional witness statements we collected in Syria and Turkey corroborate that Razan was held by the Islamists before her trail goes cold. We've confronted high-ranking members of Jaish al-Islam, but they strongly denied any involvement in the abduction. However, a judicial investigation is underway by the French War Crimes Unit here in Paris, and a former top official of the group has already been arrested in connection with the case. Mazen Darwish hopes that the investigation will finally bring clarity. For him, Razan's absence is reminiscent of the pro-democracy movement in Syria. The fate of Razan and her colleagues resembles that of the civil, peaceful movement that tried to create a moral alternative for Syria. They were crushed between the regime and these Islamist groups that in the end are authoritarian as well. 8 years after Razan and her colleagues disappeared, their fate remains one of the great mysteries of the revolution. But friends and relatives have not given up hope that one day they will know the truth.
Joining me now from Bonn is Lewis Sanders from DW's investigative unit. Lewis, it's been more than 7 years now since Razan Zaitouneh and her colleagues disappeared. Have you found any trace of them?
That's a tough question because there are credible indications following her abduction that she was held for a number of years, held alive. Now, we've collected a lot of information over the past couple of weeks, and part of this process includes, there are also false leads, and part of our job is to go through and sparse and determine which ones are credible and which ones are relevant to our investigation in determining what happened to Razan Zaitouneh, her husband, and her colleagues. Now, I would like to mention that a crucial moment, her abduction happens in a crucial moment. It's Douma, it's end of 2013. There are several armed groups vying for power in this moment, and yet one of the strongest is Jaish al-Islam, which was instrumental in a campaign targeting Razan Zaitouneh. And so that's all to say that ahead of us, we have a lot of work, to do.
What made you decide to investigate what happened to Razan Zaitouneh?
Well, Razan Zaitouneh is one of the most prolific figures of the Syrian revolution and was absolutely crucial to early revolutionary efforts to establish democratic structures in Syria. And so she is kind of this towering figure. Even in one of our previous investigations, her name comes up. Her work that she did at that time continues to inform criminal cases, human rights cases to this day. And so finding out what happened to her and her colleagues is absolutely crucial to understanding what happened to the pro-democracy movement in Syria, which was basically sidelined between, the Assad regime on one hand and some of these more hardline groups on the other.
Now, we heard in your report that Razan Zaitouneh was up against a group called Jaish al-Islam. You mentioned it, and that French authorities are investigating the group. Why France?
Well, it's important to say that, one of their senior ranking figures decided to go study in France, received a student visa, and as soon as they found out that he was there, interested parties filed a lawsuit, not only against him, but also against the group in general. And so the fact that he was in France allowed French authorities to arrest this man. Now, it's also worth mentioning that, the group has been accused of international crimes, including crimes against humanity and torture of civilian detainees. And so this is all part of a kind of larger case in France. And the reason why that's a little bit different is that, French authorities couldn't have done more without someone, within their jurisdiction. Whereas in Germany, for example, a court case can happen with crimes against humanity, for example, that would happen outside of their borders.
Today marks the 10th anniversary of the Syrian revolution, which has been turned into a full-blown war, of course. Is there anything left of the Arab Spring spirit in Syria?
Well, after 10 years of conflict, we have spoken to many people within this investigation. And, despite the chaos, despite the hundreds of thousands of deaths, despite the millions displaced, despite the complete destruction of cities, a lot of the people that we have spoken to say, we still have hope. We still believe in a democratic Syria. And, we still believe that even in this dark tunnel, there's a light at the end of it.
Louis, thank you so much. That was DW's Louis Sanders there. Now, DW's investigative unit, of course, continues to investigate. If you have any information regarding the whereabouts or the circumstances of Zaitouneh and her colleagues, about the circumstances of their abduction, please do contact us securely at dw.tips@protonmail.com.